The meeting wasn't mine, yet somehow my slides were on the screen. From the corridor outside the glass wall, I could see them clearly. The same color-coded charts. The phrasing I'd spent weeks refining, even my layout structure. Only one thing was missing: my name. Liam, my department head, was presenting as if the work had been his all along. The executives nodded, impressed, taking notes on the projections I'd built from scratch. I stood there for a while, just long enough to count the slides. 7. That was how many it took for my name to disappear completely. There's a particular kind of silence that comes with being erased. It isn't loud, but it lingers. It follows you down the hallway, into your office, through the quiet tap of your own keyboard. When the meeting ended, I went back to my desk and opened my local drive. Budget, true, dex OSEs. The timestamp showed it had been copied the night before, from my folder to exec review. I didn't need to guess who did it. Liam's assistant had accidentally CC'd me on the prep email chain. The subject line said, Henry's baseline draft. Use for tomorrow's deck. I read it twice, once as a professional, once as a man. It wasn't even meant as sabotage. It was just efficient theft. My name is Henry Raymond, 45 years old, senior operations analyst. 15 years in this company. 7 under the same manager. 3 reorganizations survived. 1 promotion promised every 3rd quarter and forgotten every 4th. I wasn't angry. I was inventorying. That evening, I stayed late, printed my version of the presentation, and wrote 2 words across the first page in blue pen. Noted it. The next morning, Liam stopped by my cubicle, coffee in hand. Great work on the projections, Henry, he said, cheerful as ever. The execs loved it. Glad to hear, I replied. So what's next? We'll need you to refine the numbers. Just make sure they align with Jordan's new structure. Jordan, our new data lead, he said. Brilliant guy, real energy. Came in from marketing analytics. You'll like him. So I report to him now? He hesitated. Just temporarily. Streamlining. That word again? Streamlining. It's corporate shorthand for, we don't want you in the room, but we still need your work. The new structure was chaos disguised as innovation. They called it Nova Ops, a dynamic realignment initiative. In translation, a project to make the same results look faster, cheaper, and younger. The processes I'd built over years were labeled legacy systems. Jordan's team replaced audit logs with dashboards that blinked faster but told less. Still, the room clapped louder now. Efficiency had found a new face. At first, I tried to cooperate. I sent suggestions. I phrased concerns carefully. We're dropping traceability in these roll-ups, I told Jordan during one sync. We're gaining speed, he said, smiling, at the cost of integrity. At the cost of bureaucracy, he corrected, and turned back to his monitor. That was the moment I understood. I wasn't being ignored because I was wrong. I was being ignored because I was slow. And in the new culture, slow was a synonym for replaceable. 3 weeks into Nova Ops, the first warning appeared. My access to the operations dashboard failed. A red banner, access denied. I checked the internal logs. The permission change was approved by J. Smith. I didn't know anyone by that name, not until I realized Jordan had shortened his email for his new title, Jordan Smith, Data Operations Lead. Promotions. Apparently moved faster than protocols. I called Liam. Looks like my access was revoked. Oh, right, he said. We restructured the visibility tree. You'll still get the reports you need. I built those reports, I said. Exactly. You know them so well. You don't need to see every detail anymore. It was logic that only worked in management language. I thanked him, hung up, and started a new habit, checking the audit trail every morning. When you can't see the system, you watch who touches it. Within a week, I saw 6 major edits to live sheets, all unlogged, all automated, no explanations. At 8:10 p.m. on a Wednesday, I found Maya, one of the few analysts who still stayed late. They lock you out too? She asked. Just my dashboards, I said. Mine too. They said I was slowing approvals. Apparently, review cycles hurt velocity. We exchanged a look. Quiet recognition between people who still thought accuracy was part of the job. That weekend, I wrote a small script to track changes from my archived files. Not to interfere, not to hack, just to observe. Every time Nova Ops modified a formula, it left a fingerprint. By Monday, the new dashboard showed record efficiency, projected margins up 4.3%, forecasting error down 1.1%. The VP congratulated Liam. The team celebrated with pastries. Jordan gave a short speech about data agility. I stood at the back of the room, clapping once. Later that night, when the office was quiet, I opened the public report. Buried deep in the formulas was a single line. I-farer 0, round up A1 1. A neat little trick that rounded every negative variance upward. It didn't just hide loss. It reversed it. Subtle, elegant, wrong. I didn't change it. I copied it. Saved it as variance manip 07 got x as x. Printed it. The printer hummed slowly, almost in rhythm with my breath. When I slid the pages into a binder, I realized something simple. I wasn't collecting proof anymore. I was building timing. Friday afternoon, Liam called another team meeting. Nova Ops is officially ahead of schedule, he announced. We'll present the success report to the board next month. Jordan, outstanding work. Applause again. Jordan smiled modestly, the way people do when they think they've built something lasting. I didn't clap. I looked at the digital clock on the wall. 5:02 p.m., the precise minute every Friday when accountability goes home early. After the meeting, I approached Liam. When's the board review? 3 weeks. Why? Just making sure the baseline is aligned before reporting. Baseline? He laughed. Henry, there's no baseline anymore. We've evolved past that. That sentence stayed in my head longer than any insult could have. We've evolved past baselines. It sounded visionary, but it meant dangerous. That night, I backed up everything. Logs, screenshots, timestamps, even the sound file of the printer feeding each page. I put the USB into a small metal box, labeled it with the date, and locked it in my drawer. Not revenge yet, just preservation. When I turned off the light, the glass wall reflected someone I hadn't seen in a long time, a man who no longer expected fairness, only precision. 3 weeks after the Nova Ops launch, the first real crack appeared. It wasn't dramatic, just an email, short and polite. Access permissions updated for workflow modules. Let us know if you need assistance. When I tried to open the operations dashboard, I got a red bar. Access denied. At first, I assumed it was a mistake. Then I checked the changelog. The access modification had been approved by J. Smith. I didn't know anyone by that name. Later, I realized it was Jordan. He had shortened it to match his new title, Jordan Smith, Data Operations Lead. Apparently, promotions moved faster than permissions. I called Liam. Looks like I can't open the dashboard anymore. Oh, right, he said, voice too casual. We restructured the hierarchy. You'll still get what you need. I built those reports, I reminded him, exactly. You know them better than anyone, so you don't really need to see them anymore. That was the kind of logic that could only survive inside a corporate building. The kind that sounds intelligent until you think about it for 2 seconds. I thanked him, hung up, and began a quiet routine, checking the audit trail every morning. When you can't see the system, you watch who touches it. Within a week, I'd logged 6 major edits. No comments. No documentation. Just timestamps. At 8:10 p.m. one Thursday, I saw Maya still at her desk. They lock you out too? She asked. Just my dashboards, I said. Mine too. They said my process was clogging the pipeline. We shared a look, the kind that passes between people who know they've already been written out of the story. That weekend, I built a quiet watcher, a small script to monitor every change in Nova Ops against the archived data from before the relaunch. It didn't interfere. It only observed. Every change left a fingerprint. By Monday, the new dashboard claimed another miracle. Projected margins up 4.3%. Liam called it a validation of our cultural shift. The VP congratulated the team. Jordan smiled modestly and used the word agility 5 times in one sentence. The room applauded. I clapped once. That night, when everyone left, I stayed. I opened the public-facing file and found a single cell that didn't belong. Ferrer 0. Round up A1.1. It looked innocent, a formula designed to round up variances instead of showing losses. Tiny, invisible, strategic. I didn't touch it. I copied it. I saved the file as variancemanip07.xlsx. Then I printed it and filed it behind a clean cover sheet. The printer hummed quietly like it knew the weight of what it was doing. When I slid the paper into my binder, I realized something. I wasn't just keeping records. I was waiting. Friday afternoon, Liam held another team meeting. Nova Ops is officially ahead of schedule, he said. We'll present the board results in 3 weeks. Jordan, fantastic job. Applause again. The pattern had rhythm now. Flattery, deflection, noise. I didn't join. I looked at the digital clock on the wall. 5:02 p.m. The moment truth always takes its coffee break, afterward I asked, "When's the board review?" 3 weeks, he said. Why? Just checking that the baseline's aligned. Baseline? He laughed. Henry, there's no baseline anymore. We've evolved. That was it. The real breakpoint. The moment a company stops verifying and starts believing. That night, I backed up everything. Logs, screenshots, even the mechanical sound of the printer feeding each page. I sealed the USB in a small metal box, labeled it with the date, and locked it in my drawer. Not revenge. Not yet. Just readiness. When I turned off the office lights, the reflection in the glass showed a man who had finally stopped expecting fairness and started designing proof. Revenge isn't an event. It's a schedule. The weekend after the Access lockout, I spent 2 full days rebuilding what the company had erased, my own version of the truth. I started with the last clean data set, then added every subsequent change I could trace. Date, time, user, variance. Every line a footprint of negligence disguised as progress. By Sunday night, the sheet had 247 entries, each a quiet contradiction. I didn't plan to expose anyone. I just wanted to be ready when the system collapsed, because it always does. I created 3 folders on my external drive. Proof, screenshots, logs, raw data, noise, the polished dashboards with manipulated formulas, bridge, the version I would use to link both when the time came. If I vanished tomorrow, anyone could open those folders and see the pattern. That's how truth should look, structured, quiet, undeniable. At work, I stayed the same. Same coffee at 8:15, same elevator, same polite nod to the receptionist. Routine was camouflage. Liam passed by my desk once. How's the adjustment going? Smooth, I said. Good, you'll like the new numbers. I always do, I replied. He smiled, relieved. I smiled, recording his words in my head. At night, when my daughter was asleep, I opened my binder. The first page still held that memo. 12 names, not mine. I'd noted it across the top weeks ago. Now I added new pages, screenshots, formulas, summaries of inconsistencies. I wasn't imagining revenge. I was formatting it. One evening around 11:40 p.m., I noticed a strange repetition in the logs. Every automation from Jordan's team modified the same 5 cells across different sheets. Identical pattern, identical timing. I cross-referenced with older quarters. The same manipulation. They weren't faking everything, just enough to create the illusion of momentum. The system rewarded speed, and Jordan had given it exactly that. That's when the plan began to form. Not as an idea, as a sequence. Proof, timing, exposure. On Monday, I approached Maya. Can you do me a favor? Depends on what kind. Every Friday at 4 p.m., download an export from Nova Ops. Don't edit it. Name it with the week number. Keep it in your drive. Are we allowed to? It's not about allowed, I said. It's about reference, she nodded. Maya understood things quickly, the way people do when they've been dismissed too many times to waste words. For the next 3 weeks, she saved the files. I verified each, stored them under, bridge, and waited. By the end of week 3, the numbers looked too good to be true, because they were. Margins up 4.8%. Error rate under 1%. Liam was praised for transformational leadership. Jordan was profiled in the company newsletter. Everyone loved the story, but stories built without a source eventually fall apart. The night before the board meeting, I stayed late. The office lights dimmed automatically at 9:02 p.m., but I didn't move. I reviewed every folder, verified every checksum, and printed one more copy of my notes. It wasn't revenge. It was restoration. Before leaving, I took out the same printed memo, the one that started it all, and placed it flat on my desk. Next to it, I set the USB, labeled neatly, Truth Backup, Use when asked, because I knew they would ask. They always do, just not soon enough. The quarterly board meeting began at 9 a.m. on the dot, inside the glass room where optimism sounded louder than doubt. 14 people took their seats, tablets glowing, styluses ready, coffee cups sweating onto coasters that had the company logo pressed into them as if branding could keep anything from slipping. The title slide read, Nova Ops Performance Review, Q3. Liam stood at the head of the table in a dark suit, voice steady, cadence smooth, slides rehearsed. Operational cycle time down 40%. Forecast accuracy up 5 points. Customer satisfaction index +7. Lines moved upward, bars stacked neatly, colors behaved themselves. The applause was polite, the kind of clapping that exists to fill silence. I sat 2 seats from the end, notebook closed, a small USB in my right front pocket, and watched numbers perform without being questioned. Acorn Retail joined on video. Their representative, Ms. Tran, was the kind of professional who wastes no motion and never asks a question she doesn't already know how to answer. We're seeing discrepancies in July and August, she said. Your system shows 0 missing shipments. Our reconciliation shows 57. Please account for the gap. Liam's smile flexed into something thinner. Likely an input lag, he offered. Jordan leaned toward the microphone. We'll sync with the client database after the call. It's probably an external mismatch. Ms. Tran didn't move. We synced at 06 SIR. The mismatch is internal. The projector hesitated, then the dashboard froze with a spinning wheel in the corner. Data source unavailable. No one spoke. The CEO leaned back, hands folded. Who holds the original baseline? Liam inhaled, exhaled. We transitioned away from baselines, sir. The new system is dynamic. The CEO didn't blink. Dynamic is not the opposite of verifiable. Jordan attempted to reload the view. The screen faded to black, a cursor blinking like a pulse without a body. The IT tech at the back murmured something about cache corruption. I counted 8 seconds. It was enough suspense for a truth that didn't need any. I stood. I have the last verified data set. Faces turned. Chairs creaked. The CEO said, Where? Local copy. Pre-integration, I said. I connected the drive, opened Budget True Watt XLSX, and let the old grid lines reclaim the room. No gradients. No animations. Just columns, formulas, and outcomes that could be traced to a source. I brought up the variance comparator. Red cells lit the right side like quiet alarms. 3 anomalies, I said evenly. 1. SKU mapping drift beginning late June, resulting in a 4.3% variance. 2. Rounding rule deviation that inflated reported margin by roughly 2.1%. 3. Late receipt validation disabled, leaving 57 unresolved records which matches the client's count. I didn't add adjectives. Data didn't need them. The CFO adjusted his glasses. Are we talking about manipulation? We're talking about rule changes without version control, I said. Every change favored improvement. None was documented. The CEO looked at Jordan. Jordan's jaw worked, but words didn't arrive. Liam's hands flattened against the table. He wasn't angry. He was realizing what he'd endorsed. I advanced to a single page I had prepared months earlier, not as a trap, but as a tool. Recovery plan. 72 hours. Reinstate baseline. Restore validation. Reconcile with client ledger. Reissue reports with variance notes and owner signatures. We stabilize first, then modernize with proper guardrails. Ms. Tran gave the smallest nod on the screen. The CEO said, "Henry, you will lead it." It wasn't a request and didn't need to be. I ejected the drive, slipped it back into my pocket, and sat. The projector fan wound down to a sigh. The meeting continued in low tones about sequencing and communications. No one argued about what the truth was anymore. It was on the screen and it didn't care who liked it. When we adjourned, people didn't hurry out. A few stared at their notes as if the paper might offer an apology. Liam approached, stopped, and then kept going without speaking. I left the room without looking back. There wasn't anything back there I needed, and there hadn't been for a while. The feeling wasn't triumph, it was alignment, like a wheel finally seated on its axle. In the corridor, my phone buzzed, a calendar invite stamped urgent from the CEO's office, followed by a terse subject line, Operational Integrity Task Force. Immediate activation. I accepted, slipped the phone into my pocket and walked toward the elevator. The mirror inside showed a face I recognized and hadn't in months. Not proud, not relieved, just ready. The next hours were motion without noise. IT restored connections to the legacy archive. Legal drafted a neutral statement for clients. Reconciliation in progress. Communications prepped a Q&A that never said the word error. Finance queued a rolling update to partners who lived and died by decimals. I wrote the first 3 sentences of our new reality on a whiteboard and refused to erase them. No metric without source. No edit without log. No decision without version. People took pictures of the board like tourists who wanted to remember where they'd been when something changed. By late afternoon, I sat with the analysts who still believed a correct number was more beautiful than a colorful chart. We divided the mess into work streams. Maya took late receipts. Carlos took skew mapping. I took rounding enforcement and the client cross-checks. We established a rule that felt like gravity. No one touched a cell unless the source file sat open next to it. And every touch left a trail with a name. We stapled log printouts to the end of each packet. It looked old-fashioned. It worked. At 7:40 p.m., the first reconciled batch matched Acorn within tolerance. At 8:25, the second batch did the same. The room exhaled in whispers instead of cheers. The best feeling in operations isn't victory. It's the absence of doubt. I left the office after 9. The city air had cooled, and the building lights reflected in the puddles like charts pretending not to be charts. I drove home without the radio, filed the day in my head, and slept without dreaming. In the morning, we would repeat the sequence, and then the next, until 72 hours meant what it said. My badge still opened the door at 7:58 a.m. That was the first signal that the company understood what needed to happen. At 9:03 a.m., the email from the CEO's office arrived with no embroidery. Subject: Operational Integrity Task Force. Lead: Henry Raymond. No compliment, no apology, just authority placed where responsibility already lived. I printed it and pinned it above my monitor because some sentences deserve gravity. Liam came by around 10, tie a little loose, voice a tone softer than usual. "Henry, about yesterday." "We're fixing it," I said. "That's enough." He nodded. "You could have taken a different approach." "We all could have," I said. "Then we'd all be wrong together." He tried a smile that didn't quite make it. "Tell me what you need." "Silence from politics and time from leadership," I said. "I can get you time," he answered. It was almost the right promise. I pulled the team into a small room with windows that faced a concrete wall, which was perfect. We didn't need views, we needed focus. I wrote the same 3 lines again at the top of a clean board. No metric without source. No edit without log. No decision without version. Then I pointed at them. This is the rulebook. Everything else is commentary. Maya started building a checklist in the shared system that made those sentences unavoidable. A field that refused to save without a source link. A change gate that stayed red until a log ID existed. A report wrapper that stamped a version hash into the footer before it could be sent. Progress slowed by design. That was the point. We restored the late receipt checks and watched missing items reappear where they had always been. We replaced the rounded values with the actuals and watched margins descend to numbers that could be defended. We rolled back the SKU mapping table to the last controlled state and then reapplied changes with proper tickets, snapshots, owners. I assigned reconciliations with durations that matched reality instead of ambition. Every evening we issued a status line to leadership. Variance delta, narrowing. Forecast error, declining. Client alignment, improving. I refused to color the lines green. They would earn their color when they were finished, not earlier. The CEO visited near the end of day 2. He stayed at the doorway, hands in his pockets, eyes moving across screens that now looked less exciting and more true. "You've avoided a headline," he said. "We've restored a baseline," I answered. "Headlines will do what they do." He stepped in, scanned the board, and pointed at the 3rd sentence. "No decision without version. This should have been here from the beginning." "It is now," I said. He placed a signed memo on my desk. Interim head of Operational Integrity. "Make this permanent by making it boring," he said. "We can do that," I replied. On day 3, at 6:40 a.m., the first full reconciliation posted with intolerance across all major clients. At 11:10, we completed the variance notes with owners and timestamps. At 4:05, the reissued Q3 pack left our server with a version hash that could not be faked without breaking the pack itself. Maya slid a copy onto my desk with a small smile. "It's slower," she said. "It's right," I said. "Slower is a feature." We published the 3-line rule as a 1-page standard in the company wiki and made it the first page of every operations playbook. The document had no narrative, no diagrams, no clip art. It carried the weight of a door that opens and closes without squeaking. People complained privately for a day and then began to appreciate how quiet it made their mornings. A product lead messaged me. "Do we really need a version for every draft?" I wrote back, "Only for the ones you want someone to believe." He didn't reply. He started attaching versions. Late that evening, I walked past the boardroom, the same room where the spinner had choked the air. The table was clean. The chairs waited like punctuation. I took the printed promotion memo from my folder, the one with 12 names and none of them mine, placed it in the center of the table, uncapped my blue pen, drew a line as straight as a rule, and added a 13th, Henry Raymond, noted. I didn't take a photo. It didn't need an audience. The only witness I required was the person who would turn off the light and see that the paper had learned something. Back at my desk, I opened a fresh document titled Operational Integrity, Baselines and Controls. It began with 3 sentences and nothing else. It would grow, but only by necessity. I wrote the preface last. "We are not here to make numbers look better. We are here to make numbers be true." Then I closed the file, closed the notebook, and, for the first time in months, closed my eyes without rehearsing what I should have said in a meeting I wasn't invited to. Before leaving, I checked the dashboard one more time. No confetti effects. No celebratory animations. Just a line trending where it should, and totals that matched clients who counted differently than we did because they had to. I shut off the monitor, stood, and felt the room give back the quiet it had owed me for a long time. The hallway lights clicked down in sequence like a metronome returning to tempo. In the elevator, my reflection looked like a man who didn't have to raise his voice to be heard. He just had to make sure the numbers could speak for him. On my way out, the security guard said, "Long week?" "Necessary one," I answered. Outside, the air carried the clean smell that follows rain even when it hasn't fallen. I didn't plan tomorrow's battles. I didn't need to. Systems fail when people forget what they're for. Systems recover when someone remembers. Tonight, remembering was enough. The following Monday, an all-hands meeting filled the main auditorium. HR called it a post-mortem, but it felt more like an autopsy that everyone knew the name of the body. The CEO spoke first. Transparency is not punishment. It's maintenance. That line stayed in my head. Liam sat 3 rows back, eyes forward, pen unmoving. Jordan wasn't there. The screen showed the new structure chart. Operational Integrity Division. Lead, Henry Raymond. Beneath it, 3 managers, all people who had chosen accuracy over applause. I didn't stand or speak. The announcement didn't need embellishment. When you fix something quietly enough, it eventually makes noise on its own. Afterward, as people filed out, the CFO stopped by. "Clean work," he said. "The kind that restores credibility instead of headlines." I nodded. He hesitated. "You'll have to decide whether you want to run this or rebuild something larger." "One at a time," I said. By afternoon, HR released the internal note. Jordan Smith has decided to pursue new opportunities. The phrasing was standard, neutral, almost merciful. Liam kept his title but lost his budget authority. Justice in offices rarely looks cinematic. It looks administrative. The next day, I found Liam waiting by the break room. "You're running integrity now." "Yes?" "Then do it right," he said, tone steady, almost relieved. I looked at him. "That's the plan." He nodded once like a man handing over the last piece of something he finally realized he didn't own. In the days that followed, small things changed. The analysts stopped calling numbers targets and started calling them facts. Reports lost their color gradients. People began double-checking before they presented, not after. I didn't need to issue orders. The silence of the boardroom had already taught them more than any policy could. On Thursday evening, I stayed late again, not because I had to, but because I wanted to see the system breathe without supervision. It did. Logs balanced, alerts cleared, reconciliations lined up. Stability, at last, felt like proof. The office was empty except for the cleaning crew. One of them, an older man named Carlos, paused near my desk. "You're the one who fixed the numbers, right?" he asked. "We just made them honest again," I said. He smiled faintly. "Honest numbers don't need fixing twice." He moved on, mop squeaking softly down the hall. I wrote that line down. Friday morning, the new dashboards went live. No confetti, no music, just truth. For the first time in months, the graphs didn't move in straight lines. They moved like reality, uneven but real. I printed the summary and placed it inside the same binder that held the original stolen memo. The first page still read, "Noted it." Now I added one more page behind it. Closed it. I didn't delete the evidence, or the files, or the logs. Justice doesn't erase. It archives. That afternoon, I received an email from Ms. Tran at Acorn. "Appreciate the swift reconciliation. Trust restored." 2 words in her signature were bolded. "Integrity maintained." Sometimes that's enough of a promotion. Before leaving, I turned off the monitor and looked at the reflection in the glass wall. I didn't look younger or happier or vindicated. Just real. The kind of real you can't fake with formatting. I took the same USB I had carried for months, the one that held all the evidence and the quiet patience, and placed it inside a plain white envelope. On it, I wrote, "To whoever inherits my desk, keep your own copy of the truth." Then I left it in the top drawer and closed it gently. As I walked out, the motion sensors dimmed the lights behind me, one by one, until the office disappeared into reflection again. The same glass walls that once hid my work now showed only balance. Outside, the city noise felt honest too. Imperfect, asymmetrical, human. I stood there for a long second, listening to the hum of the evening traffic, and thought about what fairness really means. It isn't granted, and it isn't loud. It's reclaimed, one accurate number at a time. I didn't celebrate. I didn't announce anything. I just walked home quietly, hands in my pockets, the streetlights catching the corner of a folded memo I hadn't thrown away. That was my story. Proof that dignity doesn't need to shout to win. If you've ever faced something like this, a meeting where your work disappeared, a manager who mistook silence for weakness, tell me your story in the comments. I read every one. Because every quiet story of justice deserves to be heard. Subscribe to the Office Revenge Diaries for more stories of clean, quiet fairness. Because revenge ends when justice begins.